Well, good morning. I should say good morning, Wales. Greetings from California. My name is Aled Miles. I have the great privilege of being the Welsh government envoy to the United States of America. And I'm the chief executive officer of a global technology testing company called Source Labs. You can see right behind me over my shoulder is our mascot, our logo. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning. Thank you so much for having me. It's a great privilege to be connected to Wales from California in this way. The importance of having an emerging technology conference is not lost on me. It's not lost on you either. The extraordinary digitization of our planet continues. And of course, with all that's happened in 2020, this overused expression, digital transformation, just because it's overused doesn't make it any less important, of course, has caused the acceleration of this needed digitized world much more than perhaps we expected. I've talked recently about the concept of us being now in a very high-touch technical world as we exist in a low-touch, almost no-touch physical economy. And of course, as a result of that, the need for a sense of digital confidence between a brand and the consumer of the brand is ever more important. When I talk about digital confidence in the context of my company, we think about it as a flawless user experience that's trusted and secure. And that those two components are extremely important and in balance. When we think about the future trends of technology, both experiential and secure matter enormously. We're very fortunate in Wales to have a very vibrant technology community. Our history, our pedigree in cybersecurity, semiconductors, is extraordinary. And of course, we should be talking this up more and more. But the reality is that as the world progresses with more digital touch points, the concept of experiential wealth and secure wealth matters. So what are the future trends? Well, we know the explosion of computing power means that the edge matters. And the concept of edge computing, the growth of IoT as a consequence, where more devices have more power that can therefore deliver a better experience, but of course also have the downside of therefore being more entry points to the system, requires more security. The growth of 5G, and I'm sure the fast oncoming of 6G networks, give us again more power at the edge and more power in the palm of our hands. And our use of apps and their ability to connect us and deliver for us at lightning speed give us more digital mesh, but more computational power nevertheless. Intrinsic to that is the growth, of course, of real AI, machine and natural learning, ML, a huge area where Wales can play its part technically, intellectually, and of course, the reality of how do we deal with that sociologically, with the right guardrails accordingly. The other area that I'm always aware of for both its benefits and its dangers is the concept of open source code, that we make sure that we know what is in that code, what potential dangers exist, again, what entry points we have to be guarded for, and the proliferation of that code everywhere. So I pause and I sigh, because intrinsic to this opening is both the yin and the yang of technology. The emergence of extraordinary power, and as a result, the need to be cautious and conscious of the power that creates, using it for good, not seeing it be destructive. As I think about our future, I am nevertheless extremely hopeful. I'm hopeful that brands understand the audience that they're talking to. I think about the way in which we have had to treat the elderly in our society and how we should be writing code and delivering product and user experience that is more simple, more straightforward, easier to use. And as the demographics of our world, the baby boomers who are becoming more and more tech savvy, use product, that we can meet them on that journey to create product that works for them, that helps them in their daily lives, much more so than the tech that we have created. That our connectivity allows for growing education on a global basis, that we can serve and deliver to the underserved and make the connection points and their ability to access the wealth of educational knowledge through computational power available. That we can be intentional about the use of technology for good and the way in which we can communicate, the way in which we can ensure that awareness of issues is raised for the good of our planet. How do we link technological discovery to the way in which we think about the future, simply the way we treat our planet, how we deal with climate change, how we can be one voice, how we can influence government. So we continue to be at the brink of what I call this age of living services, this fourth dimension of technology, this world in which the power of technology should be harnessed for our benefit. It's been an incredible tech journey for me. I was born in Bridgend in South Wales, ended up at a company called Symantec for many years, and had the great privilege of leading the Norton business globally, a brand that is synonymous with antivirus, of course. But I came to the United States to run a helicopter film company. What really attracted me to that business was a camera system, an emerging technology called a Cineflex. Many of you will have seen it used in the BBC television series Planet Earth. It was a gyro-stabilized, high-definition camera where we could take a helicopter up 3,000 feet and see a giraffe, zoom in incredibly close to the giraffe, and the giraffe wouldn't even know we were there. One of the most extraordinary parts of that journey when I first came to Los Angeles at Cineflex was a phone call I got out of the blue. The team was on location shooting in Africa, and Vanessa Berlowitz, the exec producer and one of the directors on Planet Earth and Frozen Planet, called me, which was a perfectly normal thing to do. I said, "Hi, how are you?" She said, "Great, we're in Africa, camera's working brilliantly." That was a relief. And she said, "David wants a quick word." And I was like, "David, he's probably like an AP or a first director, or he's the pilot or something." And so I was listening into the phone, and this voice that was instantly recognizable was down the other end of the phone. Said, "Alid, David Attenborough here. Just want to say thank you for this marvelous camera and all that it's achieving." And I remember just being just like floored. And how can I capture that moment? No, do it again. I want to record it. Can I take a photograph of you? I mean, just amazing. It was an amazing piece of technology. And I realized that it didn't have a route to market. And as you think about the successes of your own business, of course, you can be technologically brilliant. But if you can't get your product to market, if you haven't got a go-to-market strategy, of course, you hesitate. And it was that brought me to the United States. We eventually sold the business to General Dynamics because, of course, if you can see that clearly, that stable, that far away, there were many other uses in law enforcement and, of course, in the theater of war. I ended up coming back to Symantec after that for another stint here in the United States. And then I've ended up in my own life as a CEO in the world of test software automation. So when you're using, for example, the British Airways app, when you're web browsing, it is highly likely that Source Labs has tested that application before it reaches you to make sure that your user experience is flawless, to make sure that the security is trusted, which is why we talk about this concept of a flawless and trusted user experience, thereby providing digital confidence. We have offices in the UK, in Poland, in Germany, in Canada, in Australia. It's a wonderful global business with this wonderful little mascot, as I mentioned, SaaS bot. I have to say it in an American accent, but it makes sense. This world of technology, coupled with my love of Wales, is the most perfect mix for me to be able to be here with you today, albeit virtually. It occurred to me as I was preparing for this two things. One is the role in which Wales can play on the global stage. And I have to say, although, of course, I'm sort of within the system as an envoy, how pleased I was to hear that this program of envoys was being developed in order that we can make the connections on a global basis for the benefit of Wales, that we can increase trade and export, that we can give the opportunity for example, US businesses to understand what's emerging technologically in Wales and make those connections. That degree of export talent without it even needing to leave a seat in this remote Zoom-based world makes so much sense, and we have so much to offer. And so the second thing that occurred to me was our ability to make those connections today. And so what I've done is reached out to people in my network in positions of influence. You don't want to listen to me anymore. You want to listen to people in their area of expertise talk about how they see the future of emerging technology. So I hope you enjoy this segment where we talk to some people I've got so much respect for who are doing and have done and will do amazing things in emerging technology. My first guest is James Clapper. He is the former Director for National Intelligence and served under President Barack Obama. Here's the interview.
Listen, I have to make a confession here that I didn't know much at all about Wales, but I was fascinated with this background sheet, one of which is a big deal to me, that hearing aids were first developed by Welshman Edwin Stevens. Well, I lost my hearing and actually started in the Air Force. And so hearing aids are a big deal to me. It's the most I've ever read about Wales. So.
You're in demand for obvious reasons right now, and we're very fortunate. Your career is extraordinary, and you end up in 2010 serving President Barack Obama as the Director of National Intelligence, a position I believe that you held for nearly 7 years. Brief us a little bit on maybe some of the high and low points.
Well, the high moment, I'd have to say, was the takedown of Ubl. That was closure for the country, closure certainly for the intelligence community. And when we were about 95% sure through DNA that it was in fact Ubl, it was time for the president to address the country. And so I'll never forget walking out of the West Wing, and as soon as I opened the door, and there was a crowd across the street in Lafayette Park chanting USA, USA, USA. And then it hit me emotionally. What had just happened, what it meant for the country, what it meant for the intelligence community, because this is a failure on our part. And it was the model partnership between intelligence and, in this case, special operations. It really worked beautifully.
Let's pivot here, because the conference is, of course, about emerging technology. And look, right from the beginning, clearly technology has been a significant influence on your career, on your life, and it continues to be.
The single factor that's had more impact on change in the U.S. intelligence community, and I think it's true of the intelligence community in the U.K. as well, is technology. The capability we have today to collect, to amass huge volumes of data, to synthesize it and report it at the speed of the speed of light almost is truly amazing. But as you astutely point out, all technology has a two-edged sword. Fire is a great thing for mankind, but if it's abused or gets out of control, it's bad. Well, so it is with our technology today. And that our country, the US, is suffering from the bad mal-application of intelligence and the spread of disinformation. And we've seen a recent graphic example of the result of that on the 6th of January.
Are we in the West? Let me add the UK, the Five Eyes group, and the US. Are we keeping pace? Do we have enough control?
No, we don't. First of all, internationally, we don't have control. There are no real cyber norms. And until such time as the big three, if you will, don't mean this disparagingly for anybody else, but until such time as China, Russia, and the United States can agree on some norms of behavior and have enforcement mechanisms, it's going to be the Wild West. You know, in 1934, the United States established what's called the Federal Communications Commission. And initially its purpose was to regulate radio, broadcast radio, both technically in assigning frequencies and the like, but also substantively, the content of what was permissible to be broadcast on radio. And it was later extended to television. We have nothing comparable for social media companies, which have gotten too big and are too powerful. And we have a very bad case of truth decay in this country, where people have devolved into their own reality bubbles, fed by social media. When people have witnessed with their own eyes the videos of the behavior of these people that rioted, raided, attacked our capital, which is traditionally a hallowed place that's treated reverentially. And if you can't agree on a basic set of facts, you got a real problem. And we have a real problem in this country.
Is there anything missing that you think that the private sector could be building that would help?
We need to push on artificial intelligence as a way of synthesizing, correlating data that's so voluminous that the humans can't cope with it. And that's the challenge the US intelligence community has. The vulnerability that needs the most work, in my view, is supply chain fidelity. The reliability of the supply chain, whether hardware or, as we've learned, software. And I'm not sure what the answer there is. And I would look to technologists in those particular areas that I have some experience in as having great potential.
Are there any technologies that have come into your life of late that have changed your world?
You know, a damn iPhone is the center of my life. I hate that, but it's true, you know, and I depend on it for so much. The problem is we think of great new things to do for mankind and improve our lives. We haven't been so good in policing up the evil aspects. The fundamental problem, of course, is that if you are connected to the internet in any way, you are vulnerable. It's just a fact. And the other thing is, people ask me about the cyber threat. Well, cyber itself is neutral. It's not cyber per se that's a threat. It's the actors in the cyber domain that pose a threat. I always like to make that semi-philosophical point.
To you, on behalf of this conference in Wales, thank you for participating. It's an honor to serve on a board with you. And I am increasingly honored to enjoy your friendship and your mentorship. So thank you. We appreciate you.
Well, Alan, thank you. That's very generous. I appreciate that. I'm very touched by that. Thoroughly enjoyed it. The time flew by, and I really appreciate your having me.
My next guest, well, he just took a company public in the middle of the pandemic. The company Sumo Logic. The CEO and president, Ramin Sayar. Ramin, we're delighted that you are able to join us here today at the Wales Emerging Tech Fest. Now, You're the CEO of a NASDAQ listed company. We'll talk about that in a second. But is there anything about Wales that you know?
Well, fortunately, a friend, you, has educated me on the history of the Welsh and the impact that it's had naturally to the founding nation. And, since I am a footballer, Cardiff, I follow and I'm aware of. I'm an Arsenal fan, to be blunt, right?
Wow.
And so
Careful.
I know a little bit to be kind of dangerous.
Well, listen, you said enough for us to continue this interview successfully. So thank you. Firstly, what's it like to take a company public? And secondly, what's it like to take a company public in the midst of COVID?
It's a little bit of an emotional roller coaster. We started in preparing for this. It's kind of like you've practiced, you've had a practice squad and you're preparing to move to the major leagues, right? And we were ready to go out and go public earlier in the year and COVID hit. So that derailed our plans. And then we kind of picked up those plans again. And it's kind of strange to do the whole thing virtual. One part of that learning is you just got to put that aside, right? And try to connect as much as you can. Second part of it is, I think learning for us, there's a lot of hunger with these investors, and particularly thematic category investors who are looking for transformational technology. So it doesn't matter the medium that you're using to communicate with them, in person, phone call, Zoom. They want to know the basics of your business, your strategy, how you can build sustainable, durable growth, how you have a competitive, differentiated offering, and that's what we had to really focus on. But the thing that we were advised on from some close friends and people that have been down this road before is stay true to what you say, focus on delivering value in terms of investors and your customers and partners, be true and honest to that, and you'll earn it out over the long run.
Okay, so now you shift not just into public mode, which carries a different degree of governance, as we all know, but you also shift to remote working. Biggest challenge?
Culture, maintaining, productivity and mental health, sense of urgency and focus, alignment and making sure communication is up and down, not just down, particularly up. And I think last but definitely not least, trying to have fun. It's a lot easier when you're in the office environment or you have locations where you can bring that. And so, those are the things I worry about and try to balance every day.
What's emerging in data, the management, orchestration of data? What's the future look like?
Well, we're entering a phase of yottabytes of data. And everyone a few years ago...
Sorry. Oh, what?
Yottabyte. You know that little guy in Star Wars who couldn't even predicted this? Literally, that's the scale of data that we're entering. And that is a collection of everything that we know and live and breathe today on our daily lives. The way we interact on mobile devices, at home automation, IoT, connected cars, everything, let alone the things we do at work, right? So we're entering more than just petabytes of scale that's required. It's yottabytes. And so what that really has an implication to is a few things. One, how do you make insight of all that information from the tsunami of data that's growing? You can't do that because no longer is it a human scale problem, it's a machine scale problem. Two, how do you actually leverage those insights and intelligence to actually drive actionable results? The third thing that comes out is implications to data privacy, process control, right? So you have data privacy and sovereignty, process and control mechanisms, right? So you can mitigate risk and breach and all that. And lastly, how you actually can improve collaboration and communication.
As you vision for the future, what do you now look at as the future horizons? What do you think is going to happen? And if you want to make that contextually broader than just Sumo, we'd be delighted to hear your view.
The challenge here is, like, as much as you want to build to the future, right? Because we know that cloud and SaaS is one, digital is two, data sovereignty, privacy, control, access control, while on the flip side of that, using that data for intelligence and analytics to make a system smarter, that balance that you have to go through. It's really the adoption curve and maturity, because we're in the trough of disillusionment right now. right? Before we come out and you see really the peak growth.
What advice would you give to Wales from a technology development perspective on the world stage?
Show rather than tell. By that, what I mean is make it easier for businesses to do more and innovate there. Connect the tech world to the university system and give tax benefits, right? Give tax benefits to develop there. I've done similar things in my previous career with smaller countries like Armenia, where we did a three-way with universities, Sumo, and the government, right? We've done the same thing in Israel, right? And so make it easier. And then you can do the telling. When you get more startups, you get more multinational companies investing there or acquiring there, and that's a good way to build upon that.
Ramin, thank you so much for what you're doing for security, quality, resilience, reliability, and for everything that you've contributed today. It's been a pleasure to have you. Thank you.
Aled, thank you for your friendship, your partnership, and this opportunity, and I look forward to doing a lot more with you.
Great. Thank you, sir. So what happens if you've got an emerging business, an emerging idea, emerging technology that you want to bring to market? The process of fundraising, starting a company. Let's now join Dave Cole, the founder and CEO of Open Raven, just as mad as Ramin. Started a business, raised funding, and got it going last year. Here's Dave. Firstly, tell us, what does Open Raven do?
Right. So my co-founder, Mark Curfey, and myself were looking at what was happening in security really in early 2019. And we noticed that every security leader we spoke to, they'd raise their hand at the end and they'd say, we don't really know where our data is. We looked at it and it said, this is going to be one of the biggest problems going forward, setting aside all of the data privacy concerns that go with it, which are often more of a compliance question. We looked at it and said, aha, there's lots of privacy companies, but there's very few companies, if any, poised at taking care of this core infrastructure issue of knowing where your data is, what data is where, and how it's being protected. And it became our ambition to do that for any organization and any cloud, anywhere they are, to be the company that, where someone can ask and answer all those critical questions.
As somebody that has successfully raised money, what advice would you give to somebody who doesn't have much experience of doing it, but wants to get seed funds for their emerging technology?
First and foremost, understand it's all about the relationship. The investor at some point has to trust you. And that trust isn't going to be built over a couple of Zoom calls. It's not going to be built by a pitch deck. At the end of the day, at the early stage, they're investing in the team and the dream. That means, do you have passion? Do you deeply care about the problem? And does that translate into a deep empathy for the customer? People can feel passion. You cannot fake it. And the VCs are laser focused on that.
What's your view on pitch decks and what you say in them?
It's incredibly important, but I would start every big presentation I ever do. And a pitch deck's one of the biggest and one of the most important. Starts by me writing down the story. And where I start is, and people think that investing is like a highly quantitative driven decision many times. It is not. It is highly subjective. Kara Norman, our seed investor, talks about the emotional arc of an investor. And I find that it's very true. They're afflicted with all the same emotions anybody else has. And where I start with something like this, like a pitch deck, is what does the person believe today? And what's their emotional state about this topic? Where are they today? Where do I want them to be at the end? Like, where do I want to take their emotions? Not what do I want to tell them? What do I want the transformation, the journey of their emotional state to be from here to here? Then, what's the story they need to hear to get there? Like, what are the proof points? What are the things?
When you think about emerging technology in the coming years, what do you think about? What's emerging?
There's a number of things that are fascinating. So, 5G is being rolled out now. We're in the early days. 5G is going to impact things substantially. Quantum is fascinating to me, and the things that are happening with quantum technology, in particular, how it's going to impact encryption. So there's a lot of interesting things happening in cryptography right now, not the least of which is preparing for protecting our privacy in the post-quantum era.
Cybersecurity, where's it going?
It's been on a collision course with privacy, and you used to be able to talk about the two separately. No more. They're hopelessly entangled, and you see this in things like GDPR. GDPR stipulates not just data privacy and retention rules and data usage things, but also how fast you need to respond to a breach. There's this element of privacy and security being commingled, and just the amount of regulatory complexity and consumer rights that need to be asserted are massive, and it's great to see. It's long overdue.
In Britain and in Wales, even though I'm based, as you know, in California, look at the United States as a kind of a leader. It's where so many amazing tech companies have grown. What is it about the California or the US culture that the rest of the world seems to have not yet grabbed that marks it so proficient in building great emerging technology and tech companies?
Oh, well, yeah, that's a great question. Smarter folks than myself who have studied this have answered it, but I'll tell you what I feel as someone doing it. And that experience is, it's the ecosystem around you. It's the energy from the people. It's the network, the community. One of the things we're heavily invested in is helping each other from a community perspective and comparing notes. The key to duplicating that is to create a great community and to lose the sharp elbows and to help each other. And really then, you maximize on your most precious commodity, which is the time you have.
We want to thank you for being a part of this and wish you every success as you build your emerging technology and solve the data problem in the world of security. Thanks for being with us. Come to Wales.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Of course. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, from California, let's cross to Wales for a second and then back to Detroit, the automotive industry, and Jan Griffiths, one of the 100 most powerful women in the automotive industry executive field. Let's spend a little moment with her, learning her journey and what she thinks of automotive, emerging technology, and the shift in leadership that's needed. Oh my gosh, finally, a Welsh person on this interview moment, right? About time. And not just any Welsh person, but Jan Griffiths from Detroit, from Bridgend to Detroit in one single hop. You're one of the top 100 automotive executives of all time. Talk to us about changes. What's happened to the automotive industry? Relate it to technology for us.
The vehicle is really a smartphone on wheels. It's a device on wheels. And the automotive industry is still producing a vehicle and trying to put an advanced technology into this vehicle, which the original design of the vehicle, as you know, is decades and decades old. It's very hard for the automotive industry to just stop doing everything the way you've been doing it in the past and think about the vehicle in a different way and come at it from a technology perspective, not from a base vehicle perspective. Every single thing about the automotive industry is being disrupted. So there has to be this incredible transformation at an alarming rate that has to happen. And you talk about companies like General Motors and Ford, they're trying so hard, but they're still very much entrenched in their old ways of doing business.
One of the things that you do today is deliver this extraordinary podcast called Finding Gravitas. One of the individuals that you interviewed on the podcast was Andy Palmer.
That's correct, yes.
And just tell us who is he, or who is he now, or was he?
Andy Palmer is the former CEO of Aston Martin and COO of Nissan. Tremendous story of leadership change, leadership style change from the British UK automotive industry to the Japanese back to Aston Martin.
Well, Aston Martin, as we all know, made an investment in Wales. And if I'm not mistaken, here's a small clip from your podcast about him talking about investment in Wales.
Tell me a little bit about the Welsh culture. What's it like leading a plant installation in the culture in Wales?
What I like about working with the Welsh is that they really did knock down walls to make things happen, because there was this hunger times pride. That plate on a DBX that says made in Wales, as opposed to saying made in the United Kingdom, is an enormous motivator for the team. And they see it on every car that goes down the track. It makes it an inspiring group to work with.
Harnessing the spirit of the Welsh dragon.
Indeed.
When I kick off my keynote presentations, I have a slide. It's the Welsh flag behind me, some young women holding up the flag, and you can just see the Welsh spirit coming through. And I say, you know, the Welsh are a fiery, feisty sort of people. We have a rebellious spirit. And we do. And it's the ability to take all of that energy and focus it in one area or another and make that happen and put that to work. This energy and passion that we have as Welsh people that we can bring to bear that perhaps other countries can't.
And I know that as we make sure that the participants of this conference know who you are and have your email address, that you will help in any way you can, right?
Yes,
any
absolutely.
last thoughts or comments for our audience of Tech Fest fabulousness?
There are tech opportunities, many of them in the automotive industry. It's not always easy to connect with the industry. There are organizations in existence right now to help. Planet M in Detroit is one of them. Ann Arbor Spark is another. There are several of these organizations out there to help nurture that environment and that relationship and grow. And I am happy to make those connections and support in any way I can. Thank
you, Jan. I can't encourage our audience enough to join the podcast series that you do, Finding Gravitas. It's an amazing series with amazing guests. Thank you for joining us at the Welsh Tech Fest conference today.
Thank you, Aled.
I'd like to thank all of my guests for participating in our Tech Fest conference. I hope you got something out of each one of those interviews, and certainly a window into the world of how America thinks and how the technology industry here is evolving. I will continue to link people from this part of the United States to the people involved in emerging technology in Wales. It's such a great shame that I can't be with you. We know the reasons why. It's the period in my life where I've least traveled to Wales back home, which of course has been a sense of great frustration, but I keep the shiny dragon with me at all times. Isn't that beautiful? So I wish you all continued safety as we emerge out of this extraordinary period of time. But most of all, I wish you personal success in your emerging technology journey and how you will represent Wales, a nation that I'm incredibly proud of, that I know has a deep intellect, an extraordinary workforce, and amazing things to offer. And I look forward to meeting you and connecting with you over the coming months and years. My very best. Hwyl. Bye for now.